Good evening, everyone. Those were the wonderful singing and playing of Marie Garrett, who will be speaking with us later. And the song Shenandoah reminds us, I love the line that we are the birthplace. And tonight, today, Virginia is and will be the birthplace where we renew democracy. So I'm Andrea Miller. Welcome to our 2025 gala, Mobilizing for Democracy, where we are bringing together artists, faith leaders, electeds, organizations, and we will all be working together to return us to our state of democracy. And we start right here in Virginia. So if Gabe, next slide. I'm Andrea Miller. I'm the founding board member and the executive director of Center for Common Ground. And I live right here in Virginia. This is a very, very, very important place to me, my adopted home. So one of the things that I will be doing will be making the case for why Virginia, our elections in 2025, I hear a lot of people talking about 2026, but here in Virginia, we are taking the very first stand in 2025. Next slide. The mission of Center for Common Ground is we educate and we empower voters of color in voter suppression states. When we started, Virginia was a voter suppression state. And we want people to be able to engage in elections and advocate for their right to vote. So when we are not voting people in office, then we will be holding them accountable. Together, we can build a democracy that prioritizes the voices of all people. And my father was from Mississippi, and they have a saying in Mississippi, all means all, y'all. Next slide. Our work. Since 2020, we have reached 28.5 million voters of color. In 2025, we plan to reach 885,000 Black voters in Virginia. With your help in 2026, we will reach 4.5 million Black voters, and I may boost that number up. Next slide. Now, in Virginia, we will be electing a governor, a lieutenant governor, and an attorney general. And in Virginia, we will make history because Virginia will elect a woman governor. Additionally, we will be electing all 100 members of the Virginia House of Delegates. And Delegate Dan Helmer, will be here to talk about that. Now, in Virginia, because we have the Virginia Voters' Bill of Rights, early voting in Virginia starts next Friday. And so I will be probably one of the first 10 people to vote in my county. Next slide. There's a glorious sign when you enter the state of Virginia where it says Virginia is for lovers. I think we might need to change that sign and say Virginia is for women, because when we look at the House of Delegate races, there are 25 Democratic incumbents running, 4 Republican. So that's 29 incumbent women that are running for office in the House of Delegates. And then in terms of challengers, we have 31 Democratic challengers, 13 Republican ones, for a total of 44 women that are challenging for a seat in the Virginia House of Delegates. Now, of that total, 18 Democrats and 8 Republicans are first-time candidates, giving Virginia a total of 73 women running for the 100 seats in the Virginia House of Delegates. As I said, we're going to have to change that sign. Virginia is for women. Next slide. All right, we've got democracy centers. What are democracy centers? Well, we have 15 of them. There are 7 in Virginia, and they are in communities. You will hear from one of our democracy center leaders where the communities where we are working to turn out Black voters. We have year-round organizers in those communities working with voters on whatever their needs are. So I'm going to stop now. Oh, actually, no, I'm not. Next slide. I've got to show you our impact. One of the new things that we are doing this year is we realize one of the challenges that people have here in the US is we stopped teaching civics 40 years ago. So no one knows how government is supposed to work. I am a teacher, so I am going back to my teaching roots. And my team and I, hey Ed One, we are building out civics courses, the federal government, how it works, and individual state governments, how they're supposed to work. And our democracy centers and local churches and other organizations will be able to present this information to their members. Next slide. Community engagement. We all know and we've all heard about the new budget bill. People in low-income communities, we are hearing that they are very, very afraid. So what we are working on is we have built presentations outlining what is good in the bill. We've got 2.5 pages, and what is bad in the bill. We got about 28 pages of the bad, but it lets people know this is what is coming, and it will allow them to begin to make plans. Virginia is going to lose 9 hospitals. 3 have already, their closings have already been announced. So we have these for all the states where we have democracy centers, and we also have it for friends in Wisconsin, Florida, Missouri. I did New Jersey today, and Tennessee. Next slide. We invite you to join us in our work in Virginia. We send postcards, and because we are doing outreach to Black voters, we make sure that the images on our postcards will be inspirational to our voters. And we have a very powerful script. November 4th, choose Virginia leaders you can trust, protect healthcare, housing, food, education, civil rights, and our Black history. Vote. So 3 things we want Black voters to do. We need them to choose, protect, and vote. Next slide. And we'll go through these next slides rather quickly. We are working with the James Brown Family Foundation. Next slide. And this is our collection of previous postcards, again, designed to inspire. We have a website where you can go order postcards. You can order your addresses. Postcards are to be mailed literally September 15th all the way through October 20th. So we have 885,000 addresses. I believe we have about 350,000 left. So if postcarding is what you love to do, we've got an opportunity for you. Next slide. People always want to know, well, do postcards work? Well, when you have appropriate images for your target audience, when you have an inspirational message for your target audience, yes, postcards work. For us in Virginia in 2024, the postcards that we sent created an 8.2 turnout increase. And in 2024, we sent postcards to Black voters that did not vote in 2023. And we got a number of those voters to come back and vote in 2024. Next slide. Now, we've invested in an auto dialer, but it's a nice one. It's not a mean, scary one. And you, even if you're the only person on it, will be connected to either an answering machine or a voter in 23 seconds. You won't have to deal with this is a bad number. All of those are filtered out. Next slide. Now, our phone banks are different from a lot of phone banks that you've worked on. We have a phone bank for each individual county where we have the early voting information, vote by mail, and election day information, and the registrar's phone number for that county. We leave messages and we offer phone bank training Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday every day up until the election. Next slide. Now, the impact of phone banks, because we leave voicemail, many people the information they need, where they can vote, when early voting is open, is really the information they need, especially older voters, and phone number of their registrar. This makes it easy for people to go out and vote. So if all people get is a voicemail, we get a 5.9 turnout increase. If we actually have a conversation with voters, that's a 17.3% turnout increase. All right, we are ready. I want to introduce our board member, Reverend Rodney Sadler, who will join us. Good evening, Reverend Sadler, and offer a brief prayer and some insights. So thank you, Reverend Rodney.
Thank you so much, Andrea. It's wonderful to be with you tonight. It's wonderful to be with you. And can I just say how proud I am of you? You have done such good work. I love this new Civics 101 classes that you put together for various states and for the nation. We need to teach civics if we are to have a vital and thriving democracy. Let me say I'm proud also to see that there are wonderful people from the great state of North Carolina on the phone tonight. We've got Anita Earls. We've got my brother Brandon Rivers here. So just great to see that North Carolina is showing up as well. Tonight, I just want to say that I know that we're in difficult times. We're having a hard time in this nation. We just saw an assassination of one of the leading opponents of justice and freedom in the nation. And it's a horrible thing that's happened, and we have to acknowledge that. But we also have to realize something else, too, that the other side fights with hate. Long ago, when asked what the greatest commandment was, Jesus said simply, two commandments: love the Lord your God with your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. And he tied these two together, saying that you can't say that you love God unless you love your neighbor whom you have seen. And this reminds me in this moment that what we need more than anything else right now is love. We need not just love on an individual, interpersonal level, but we need love, as Cornel West said, justice is what love looks like in public. So as I'm calling for love today, I'm saying that we need love in our public square. We need love that looks like adequate health care for everyone. We need love that looks like a decent quality education for every person. We need love that looks like fairness for all immigrants seeking a better life in this nation. We need love that looks like a living, affordable wage. We need love that looks like making sure that everyone in this nation has an opportunity to thrive. I'm so glad for the Center for Common Ground because they're working on love that looks like making sure everyone has the ability to vote and has the ability to make their voice heard in the public square. I want to pray right now just to open us up as we get started, and then I'll close this out in a second here. Holy One whom we call on by many names, we're grateful to you for bringing us here tonight. We're grateful for the Center for Common Ground and the work that it does to bring about justice and goodness, to make sure all of your people are able to thrive, to vote, to participate, and to work to change their government for the better. As we gather right now, we just want to say that we pray that everything goes well tonight, that all of our speakers will bring forth clarity the message that we're sending forward, that people will support this good work, and that we will truly be able to make a great difference in the upcoming elections across the South, across places where people's voices tend to be squelched. Let us be good witnesses. We call on you by many names, but remain eternally grateful to you in all of them. Amen. Amen.
Amen.
Now, as before I go, I'm supposed to do one other thing, and that is I would love to say this is an organization that does great work, and you could do a whole lot worse than making sure that you contribute to the work of the Center for Common Ground. Please make sure that you make a check, that you send a donation in, that you find a way to make your voice heard in this larger effort by sending your financial support. We need it. The nation needs it. And if we support the work that the Center for Common Ground is doing, if we support the democracy centers across the country, if we support the Civics 101 going out, we truly can change America for the better. God bless you all, and good night.
Thank you so much, Reverend Rodney. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Now, the next person I want to introduce is Ann Toback from the Workers Circle. We have done so much work with the Workers Circle. We co-host with them the Effective Advocacy Program. We just do so many things. They are bringing a team of people to Virginia to canvass with us. They canvassed with us in North Carolina. These are our ride or dies. These are the folks that stand with us in everything that we do. So, Anne, welcome. She is the CEO of the Workers Circle. It is a progressive Jewish organization that is literally on the front lines working with Black voters and helping us ensure people continue to have the right to vote. And
Thank
welcome.
you, Andrea. And there's no place I'd rather be tonight, and there's no organization I'd rather be standing next to than the Center for Common Ground. It's an honor to be here tonight celebrating the Center for Common Ground, led by you, the incredible Andrea Miller, a woman who is both a hero and someone I'm so proud to call a friend, and the critical work the center does to defend our democracy. This is a moment when our democracy has never been more at risk, and your work has never been more essential. As the CEO of the Workers' Circle, a national secular Jewish social justice organization founded in 1900 by Eastern European immigrants fleeing autocracy and seeking democratic freedoms, I want to talk about power and how we build it together. That history, our founders' fight for democracy, drives everything we do today. And what the Center for Common Ground has figured out is something that so many organizations miss. Real change happens when we organize across geography, across communities, and across every line and every avenue that tries to divide us. The center's approach is brilliant in its simplicity and inspiring in its effectiveness. You've mobilized people across this nation to ensure that Black voters in voter suppression states have the information they need to overcome barriers and get to the polls. And you work in meaningful partnership with dozens of social justice organizations across the country like us. When volunteers in Oregon send postcards to voters in Virginia, when phone bankers in New York connect with voters in North Carolina, that's solidarity in action, and that's how democracy wins. The Workers' Circle has been so proud to partner with the center for years now. Every Monday evening, our volunteers join the center's phone banks. We've sent thousands of postcards together. As Andrea mentioned, we've knocked on doors together in North Carolina, and I'm joining our delegation. We're coming to Virginia this October. But this partnership runs deeper than voter contact. Andrea also mentioned our shared monthly effective advocacy online training program. The center and the Workers' Circle are not just analyzing the attacks on our democracy, we're equipping thousands of people to fight back together. This year alone, over 6,000 people so far have learned core advocacy skills that are making a real difference. How to organize a protest that gets results, how to hold elected officials accountable at town halls, how to make legislative visits that actually move policy. We're teaching the skills that build power. Our organizational partnerships works because we build trust by showing up for each other consistently over years. And we share an unshakable commitment to building the truly multiracial democracy that this country has never achieved but desperately needs. So let's be clear about the moment we're in. Autocracy isn't knocking at the door, they're already inside. The Voting Rights Act is under sustained attack. Millions of Americans are seeing their right to vote stripped away by state laws, by federal inaction, and presidential threats. This is the fight for our lives. But here's what gives me hope. Organizations like the Center for Common Ground understand that none of us can win this fight alone. In the Jewish tradition of resistance, from the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising to the Freedom Summer Volunteers, we know that liberation is collective work. As someone who leads an organization rooted in these traditions of resistance and collective action, I know this truth. We organize together or we lose together. At the Workers' Circle, this has been our hallmark for over a century. All of our victories came when we made strong partnerships and worked in coalition, when hundreds of thousands of people acted together for critical change. It was true in the 1920s, and it's true today. All of the great victories of the last century that we shared in, the women's right to vote, Social Security, the Voting Rights Act, the National Labor Relations Act. Of course, all of these achievements are under threat now, and we know what it takes to overcome attacks on our rights and freedoms. It takes building partnerships across our organizations, across cultures, across communities, across every divide that seeks to weaken us. Today, this necessity isn't just our strategy, it's all of our survival. The Center for Common Ground gets it. They've created a model where people power isn't just a slogan, it's a strategy. They're building a movement for democracy across America. They've shown us how to connect across race and place to build the kind of sustained pressure that changes laws and changes lives. This is a partnership model that democracy needs today, and one that organizations everywhere have to embrace. Tonight, I join my organization and people across the country in celebrating the center's leadership, their staff, their volunteers, and everyone who makes this work possible. We celebrate how you help us all build real power. We celebrate how you're helping us create the democracy we've never had, but absolutely deserve. The work continues, the stakes couldn't be higher, and together we're going to win. Thank you, Andrea. Thank you, everyone who's joining and celebrating this incredible organization. See you on the front lines.
Exactly. See you in Virginia. Thank you so much, Anne. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Center for Common Ground, we would be nothing without our volunteers. And one of our volunteers, Carol Rizzolo, she is a volunteer. She is an organizer. She is a postcarder. She is a donor. And she is an expert at recruiting other organizations to join us in this work. Carol, we've got some guests to bring up.
Definitely. Well, thank you, Andrea. I am so proud and so delighted to have Selena Stewart joining us this evening. She is the Chief Executive Officer of the League of Women Voters of the United States, leading a century-strong voting rights organization in its mission to empower voters and defend democracy. Her litany of accomplishments goes on way longer than I could possibly go through. But I have to say that she launched the Unite and Rise 8.5, an ambitious campaign to mobilize 8.5 million voters and assert the League's role as a backbone organization for nonviolent civic action and defense of democracy. Her leadership emphasizes racial equity, organizational culture, and the need to modernize civic engagement for the current era. Selena, your leadership has just been extraordinary. And in the first year, you've reached more than 30 million voters, invested over $1 million in nonpartisan election education, and a bold vision to strengthen the League's leadership in voting rights, aligning its national network of 700 plus affiliates and grow its members and financial capacity through equity-centered transformation. I am so delighted to welcome you to this, Selena. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Carol, so much for that introduction. And thank you to Andrea and the whole Center for Common Ground team for this invitation. I'm just so thrilled to be here and also to join you in this movement moment, right? I'm thrilled to join you here tonight and share the importance of voting in this moment. Voting is an exercise of power. And by not voting, we abdicate that power. And whether we acknowledge it or not, abdicating that power, there will always be an outcome. And so it's so critical for us to engage in moments like this. And our ancestors, many years before myself and before probably many of you, fought for this right that we have here today. And so as we think about voting, and while each individual exercises our right, we do so not only for ourselves, but on behalf of our families, our communities, and for the greater good of democracy. So thank you all for protecting, leveraging, and exercising your power, because I know everybody on here is going to vote. I'm not even worried about it. However many people are here, I know we can count on that many voters. And so I look forward to our continued work together. So let's talk about voting and what's coming up in the next couple of months. This November, there are elections in more than 30 states around the country. And we know that local elections influence our daily lives directly. Voters determine things like healthcare, education. Andrea was talking about this in her opening presentation, jobs, civil rights, environmental protections, and so much more. Especially in local elections, the margin of victory is often very small. And so that means that every vote matters even more. And so turning out during midterms, which is traditionally and historically lower turnout, by overwhelming, we make an impact during midterms that affect us during the presidential cycles. So now is the time to get ready for Election Day. Check your registration, see who's on your ballots, find out where your polling place is, and most importantly, make a plan to vote. So let's talk about why nonpartisan get out to vote efforts are so important. People are sometimes disillusioned by the two major political parties. Based on numbers of people registering as independents and the number of people choosing to sit out, we know that people are feeling disengaged, disenchanted. Nonpartisan groups in particular, especially those located in communities like the Center for Common Good and also the League, we are often the trusted messengers in our community. People trust what we say, people trust how we're showing up, and they trust that we are delivering accurate information. So while politicians and partisan groups sometimes drop into communities only when an election is happening, we are the guardians who are there all the time. We're answering questions, helping and serving people. And so community-based nonpartisan groups are made up of trusted messengers that communities are used to talking to. And that is why I think investing in nonpartisan groups to do GOTV work helps really build the infrastructure that's so clearly needed to engage people in civic life, especially in between elections. Groups like the League engage in democracy beyond voting to hold election officials accountable, but also monitor what's happening in government bodies from town to councils to school boards. So what does it mean to make a plan? Well, we have a tool. The League has a nonpartisan election website, vote411.org, and it has everything a person needs to get ready to make your voice heard. Make sure that you have a voting plan for how, when, and where you will cast your ballot. You can check vote411.org for all of your options for mail voting, voting early, which I know is just passed in 2022 in Virginia, starting next Friday, and even finding your polling place. And that's so important because oftentimes on election day, as a form of voter suppression, polling places change. And so you just want to make sure you're showing up to the right place and that you have the information you need. Next week is a big week. Tuesday, September 16th is National Voter Registration Day. Around the country, companies and organizations like our two organizations are working in communities and online to help people register, new voters in particular. Since the civic holiday was founded, the League has been one of the largest on-the-ground partners for MVRD, and we host hundreds of events all on this day. I think last year we hosted about 1,000 events. And so if you've moved or changed your name since you last voted, it's time to update your voter registration, and it's time to check and make sure that you are still on the rolls. And then if you or someone you know needs to register to vote for the first time, Virginia has same day voter registration now, right? So you can actually vote. Yes, you can vote. Even if you find out that you're not registered or you're not on the voting rolls, you can actually register and vote the same day, which is huge for making sure that people can participate in the franchise. If you're not registered to vote, you can also do that through vote411.org. And even if you're already registered, it's always a good idea just to check. The last thing you want to do is show up and have an issue. And so checking in advance will save you some time. And if you have time and you are super ambitious, people power our elections. Every polling place relies on election workers and volunteers in our community. And we have seen a more recent threat against people who are just doing their job to effectuate safe and effective elections. And so if you have time to participate or you know someone who has time to participate, be a poll worker on election day or during the early voting period. There's usually training associated with that, just so you know what you're getting into. And you can also sign up to be a poll worker through vote411.org. We have thousands of people who have registered. We've been proactively trying to get everyday people to be poll workers. So one, you understand how it works, but also to get people engaged. And so planning your ballot. One of the things that people often say is that voting takes work, and it does. It does. It takes a little bit of work. You got to research and figure out who's on your ballot and whether or not they align with your values and your community. But we try to make it fun. So when we're planning our ballot, we often have ballot parties where we bring your ballot to a party. Let's fill it out together, learn about this candidate. People may have personal experiences with a particular candidate. So we all fill out our ballots, seal it up, and then we either all drop it off together or you drop it off on your way to work or whatever. But make it a community thing, because voting has been a community thing and it should be. So let's talk about some of the barriers. Many eligible voters still face obstacles, whether that's restrictive voter ID, whether that's a lack of vote by mail or early voting options, which is not an issue in Virginia, but also long lines and changes to polling places, like I mentioned. So just make sure you're aware of what's going on, what the deadlines are for registration, how you request your ballot, whether you can drop it off a ballot box, you have to go to the Board of Elections or a particular site. Know what you have to do to be prepared to vote. And then, of course, in Virginia, you all have more mechanisms to make it easier. And so take advantage of those. Not every voter has those opportunities. And I will just say, as I start to bring this to a close, voting is not just an individual action. It's a civic duty that strengthens our communities. It strengthens our families. When I try to encourage people to talk to their neighbors, make a voting plan, as a part of their family or community. Like, there were unfortunately people in my family who did not vote, and I was devastated. I was like, do y'all know what I do for a living? I'm a voting rights attorney. You vote? So now I have made it my mission in my family, not only my immediate family, but my extended family, to make sure that everyone in my family that I have contact with, that they are ready to vote in their local elections in 2026 and heading into 2028. So just remember, I mean, I often vote as an individual, but I vote on behalf of my nieces and nephews who are still in school, the school board people, the people who are making decisions about our roads, the people who are making decisions about the judges who are making decisions that impact our families. But all of those things matter. And also vote early. I always encourage people to vote early and to vote absentee, especially for people with busy schedules or if you have mobility constraints. Waiting at the last minute increases the risk. Sometimes the weather is bad. We know it's November. It's probably going to be a cold winter, y'all. So y'all need to try to vote September 19th through October 21st. Busy polling places, but also just unexpected issues. We had issues in 2022 where the voting machines didn't work and people were delayed. Vote early and you can avoid some of those things. I've already talked about how local races matter, but also some form of local government decides how much you pay in property taxes, whether you have to what schools are going to have certain books, what housing, what your kids can learn in school. All of those things are people we elect to make decisions that affect not only ourselves, but our families. And so, some final thoughts. And I want to leave, I always try to close with some action items. So, as voters, we all have an equal say in determining our future. That is why it's so important to go cast your vote. The leaders we elect will make decisions that affect our everyday lives, whether it be our jobs, our healthcare, or access to it, the economy, and so much more. Please, please, please tell your friends, your family, and your neighbors to be an active voter, not only on election day, but leading up to election day, especially in Virginia where you have that opportunity. Check your voter registration and make sure that you are still on the rolls and that you can vote easily on election day, and mark your calendar for November 4th. So I just want to say thank you for being an active participant in democracy in advance because I already know. So I'll just close with this. We have the power to be the change that we want to see. And I know that each of us can do our part. Each of us have a part in protecting democracy, and I hope that we use it. So let me just share a few things that I think are required in this moment as we head not only to this election, but as we continue to do work in communities. The first thing is that we have to have unequivocal solidarity. It is so critical for us to be in solidarity with each other and the work that we're doing. Relationships, consider those your infrastructure. That is your infrastructure to build, to grow. Unity does not mean uniformity. Just because we are unified, we may all do things differently to get to the end goal, and that is okay. We have to accept it. Finally, embracing the multitude of strategies that, as long as our strategies are pulling in the same direction, we are still holding power. So, so important to understand that multiple strategies is not a bad thing. It's just the diversity of perspectives coming together. And then finally, resources. Organizations like the Center for Community Good, the League, and other organizations, we need resources to do our work effectively. So do what you can to support the movement with your time, your volunteerism, and your dollars. So thank you so much. So thank you so much for this invitation. And for all of you all on tonight, I will see each of you in the fight. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Selena. I just think you're such a rock star, and there is no question that the league has made a phenomenal choice in having you there. It just makes a world of difference. So again, thank you so much for coming on, and I look forward to seeing you next summer. All right. Next up, we have the amazing Dan Helmer. Dan, it is so good to see you. Thank you for joining us. Dan is a West Point grad, an Army veteran who served in Iraq, Afghanistan, and Korea, and a lieutenant colonel in the U.S. Army Reserve. He brings that commitment to incredible service and leadership to Virginia's House of Delegates, ensuring that the Commonwealth remains a stronghold of democracy. As the campaign's chair, Dan is leading the charge to hold and expand the majority in the House of Delegates, to protect Virginia from MAGA extremism. In 2023, his leadership was instrumental in flipping the Virginia House and turning it blue, but more importantly, ensuring progress on critical issues like reproductive rights, protecting the rights, strengthening public education, securing voting rights, supporting clean energy, supporting veterans, and fighting to hold gun manufacturers accountable. Dan, I am so proud to call you a friend, and I am so appreciative that you're here. And I can't wait to have you speak to us. So thanks again for coming.
Well, thank you so much, Carol. Thank you, Andrea. The respect and just care for the work that you do is so mutual. I just wanted to thank the Center for Common Ground for everything you do in Virginia, for having me here today. And I want to especially thank everybody on this call who does the very hard work of making our democracy, such as it is, possible. I just can't emphasize right now how important the democratic process and the promise of this country mean to me and my family. I'm the son of an immigrant, the grandson of Holocaust survivors, the husband of a public school teacher, and the father of two. With everything going on, America is still our family's promised land, a place of democracy, of safety, and freedom. As you mentioned in my biography, that background, that work of America serving as our promised land is what led me to go to West Point to serve our country in places like Iraq and Afghanistan. It drives me today in the House of Delegates. I don't need to tell all of you on this call that today our democracy and our Constitution are under threat. Virginia is absolutely bearing the brunt of that conflict Our friends and neighbors are losing their jobs, and we watch in horror, absolute horror, as the country we love reels under relentless attack on the values we hold most dear. In my role with the House of Delegates, I have the responsibility of trying to brunt these attacks on our Commonwealth. And it also means I'm in a position to help make investments in the types of grassroots democratic efforts that will drive historic turnout this fall. Let me tell you, the energy right now is incredible. For the first time in recent memory, we are running candidates in every single district, 100 districts in Virginia, in rural towns, suburbs, ex-urban areas, college communities, from here where I'm talking to you in Northern Virginia to the Eastern Shore to the Shenandoah Valley. Not a single seat is uncontested. And you heard Andrea talk a little bit about it before, but we are building a new generation of public servants who reflect the richness and diversity of Virginia. Today, more women, more people of color, and more young people are stepping up to run than have ever stepped forward before, which is great because we all saw what happened in 2024. We know what happens when the communities that are the bedrock of our party don't feel confident in our party or in democracy, and the ramifications of that lack of trust. That's why we recognized early on here in Virginia the need to invest in the communities that are going to decide critical races in the House of Delegates. That includes our canvassing of Black-owned small businesses and churches in critical swing districts, our organizing and registering voters at HBCUs across Virginia. It means investing in research to develop the messages that resonate with Black, Latino, and young voters. We're investing millions in coordination with regional and national partners to register and later turn out Black, Hispanic voters, young people, and women. We are recruiting and hiring staff from the communities that they will later organize and engage in because we know that authentic conversations are the most important tool in turnout. So we have a long way to go to rebuild the trust in our core constituencies that we've lost over the last few years. But in Virginia, we're learning the lessons of the past and making real and deep commitments and resources to meet those needs. Because we know that a Virginia as diverse, young, and dynamic as ours should see themselves reflected in their legislature and in their elected leaders across the board. So with the help of organizations like yours, like you on this call, like the Center for Common Ground, like the League of Women Voters, I know we're going to get it done. So thank you so much, Carol. Thank you so much, Andrea. Thank you much to the Center for Common Ground, and thank you for all of those joining and fighting for our democracy every single day.
Thank you, Dan, so much. So proud to be a supporter of yours and just so proud for the work that you do. Okay, next up, we have another amazing person. This is Colin Allred is with us. So many of you may be aware of Colin. Hey, Colin, how are you? It's always good to see you. Thank you for showing up for us. So Colin is an American politician, a civil rights lawyer, and a former professional football player who served in the U.S. as a U.S. representative for Texas's 32nd Congressional District from 2019 to 2025. Born and raised in Dallas by a single mom who was a public school teacher, and thanks all of those public schools, his coaches, teachers, and folks at the YMCA is why he's clear he succeeded as a student athlete. He earned a full ride football scholarship to Baylor, became the captain of the football team, and after college deferred his acceptance to law school to play in the NFL, where he was a linebacker for 5 seasons. That said, a career-ending injury then opened the door for him to fulfill his other dream, which was becoming a civil rights attorney. After law school, he worked to protect voting rights across the country, and in Texas, particularly in an interesting time these days, to combat voter suppression and make sure that no eligible voters were denied access to the ballot box. Last comment about that is he served in President Obama's administration at the Department of Housing and Urban Development, moved home to Dallas when he ran for Congress and defeated an entrenched Republican incumbent. Congress, he led the effort to open a new VA hospital in Garland and 2 other VA facilities in Dallas and El Paso. Repeatedly recognized as the most bipartisan member of the Texas delegation and a consensus builder willing to work with anyone who shared his dedication to helping hardworking families gain the same opportunities he had to chase for his version of the American dream. Colin, I am so honored again to call you a friend, and for you to join us. So thank you so much, Colin, for joining us.
Thank you, Carol. It's incredibly kind of you, and I want to thank the Center for Common Ground and all y'all for being on here. As Carol mentioned, my career after my football career was as a voting rights lawyer. And I chose to do voting rights because there was a line in a Supreme Court case that spoke to me. It said that the right to vote was preservative of all other rights. That if you could vote, you could protect yourself. You could form coalitions. You could vote for candidates of your choosing. But if you couldn't vote, then you were defenseless in our democracy. And as a Texan, as a fourth generation Texan, I knew that we had been struggling with this for some time. And while I was in law school, some of the biggest and most recent attacks on the right to vote were coming to a head. And I have to tell you, over a decade ago, when I first started voting rights, it was so much more subtle back then what they were trying to do. There was often some kind of couching of their voter suppression efforts in terms of election security, or trying to improve certain things by closing certain polling places. They'd say, well, we're going to close a bunch of polling places, but we're going to have vote centers where anybody could vote. But now it's completely changed, as y'all know. And this is something that I find to be a mistake by them, because now it is just so blatant and out in the open. And it is something that folks are talking about. For much of my voting rights career, I was wondering, when are people going to start talking about the attempts to fix elections, to rig elections before it even starts? I always, I know folks like us were worried about it, but I was wondering, when is this going to, get through to, everyday folks that, what they're doing is trying to rig these elections before we even get there. And something about the way this has been so open and so blatant in Texas, what they've been doing, has really crossed over. And it's become something that I was just in church this morning for a couple of hours. There's a Black church here in Dallas where everybody's talking about it and everybody knows about it. And folks are starting to build the backlash to it. And so, I want to tell you a bit about the mid-decade gerrymandering or rigging that they've done here in Texas. They have attempted to draw 5 new districts from the pre-existing districts that we had, the 13 Democratic districts that we had, to take 5 of those away and make them into Republican districts. Not all of them will be Republican districts. They are counting on the performance that Donald Trump had in the last election, which anybody who knows much about elections knows, midterms are very different from presidential elections. And I think that in particular, some of the districts in South Texas will be very competitive. And I think we have a chance to win 3 of them. And there are a couple of others that they have created that are going to be much more difficult for us. And the district that I represented, the 32nd district in the Dallas area, is completely gone. It was a majority minority district. It was one that led to us having 3 Democrats representing the Dallas-Fort Worth area. We should have at least 5, but we had 3. They're taking us down to 2. They've also combined 2 districts in Houston, beginning with the 18th district, which was a historic district that Barbara Jordan represented, that Mickey Leland represented, that Sheila Jackson Lee represented, and that most recently Sylvester Turner represented until he passed away, and combining that with Al Green's 9th district. So they're taking Houston down from 2 African-American performing districts to 1, and they're folding in 2 districts in the Austin, San Antonio area, hurting my friends Lloyd Doggett and Greg Casar. And so this is, for us in Texas, this is an incredibly emotional fight. Many of these districts, as I mentioned, are historic in nature. We fought so incredibly hard for them. I won my district by flipping it after 22 years that had been held by a Republican, and then we created it, and then we won it. We kept winning it, and they made it so that they just decided to give up on it. And it's also historic in terms of that in Texas for much of the last half century, we've been fighting to try and get representation. And so I want to thank everybody who's paid attention to this fight in Texas. I want to tell you that we do have a legal process that's playing out. There's a 3-judge panel that's been convened. And I think there's a decent chance that 3-judge panel will overturn 1 or even more than 1 of these districts, because the one thing the Supreme Court has said that they will not allow is racial discrimination in gerrymandering. They've allowed, as y'all know, partisan gerrymandering, but the one thing they've left available is to say they won't allow racial gerrymandering. And if there's ever been a racial gerrymander in the history of this country, this is it. And so if they can't find it here, then quite honestly, we should just, forget about ever trying to defend ourselves in the court. And I want to be very clear about what we have to do going forward. I've talked a lot about this because I'm somebody who I have a passion for getting rid of gerrymandering. I hate it. I think it's broken the United States House of Representatives. I think it's left us as a dysfunctional body. I think it's led to all the extremists that you see on your TV and online who just want to go to Washington and throw rocks and make noise and never do anything. Much of that can be placed at the feet of gerrymandering. Not all of it, but much of it. But in this case, what we have to do, as I see it, is make sure that all around the country we don't allow them to continue to rig different states, and that if they do, then we have to respond. And ultimately, what we're going to have to do is, when we have the ability to ban gerrymandering nationwide. We had legislation when I was in Congress to do that. It was called the John Lewis For the People Act. And it was required every state to have nonpartisan commissions to draw their districts. We can do that at the congressional level. We can ban it. We have to do that. To me, we have to go further than that, though, and pass the entire package of laws that was in that package. We passed it out of the House. We couldn't get through the Senate, but it set national standards for early voting, for vote by mail, for the way your votes are counted, and as I said, mentioned, would ban gerrymandering. And to me, we're in a new era where we are no longer going to be able to rely on the courts to be the backstop for our democracy or for our rights. I'm a civil rights lawyer, as I said, by training. I want to believe that the courts, if you have the law and the facts on your side, that you can win the case. That's unfortunately not the case anymore. And so to me, we have to be in an affirmative era of expanding the right to vote through legislation. I think we should push for automatic voter registration when you turn 18, or same day voter registration. We need to push for all the things that we've talked about over the years that we said, it would be really nice if we could do that. Now it's time to actually do it. And sometimes, when you hit rock bottom, this is when you have to push back off up against it. And to me, this is rock bottom. What we're seeing in Missouri, what we're seeing in Indiana, what we'll see, I think, from Florida, from many of the states where they have the ability, they will continue to try everything they can to target Black and brown districts, to take them away and to make them into districts where they will elect a Republican. And this is a race to the bottom. It will destroy the Congress. Trust me, this is going to destroy the United States Congress. Even if you think it's bad now, it's going to get worse. And one thing that we have to understand is that in this fight, we're not dealing with anybody who has any respect for the Constitution, any respect for the ideals of our nation. And so we have to just win the fight. And when we win the fight, then we have to use the power that we have to address the underlying issues. And I feel really strongly, though, that this has now crossed over into being an issue that folks are going to vote on. My entire career, I wish that people would be fired up about voting laws and voting rights, and that they would be fired up about restrictions on the right to vote. We haven't been there, but I think we're going to be there now. And it's the job of folks like me and everybody on this call to talk about what they're doing, but also I think to say that, listen, voting shouldn't be a partisan issue. Who you're going to vote for is up to you, right? We can get back to the days where it wasn't that long ago in 2005 when George W. Bush was signing the reauthorization of the Voting Rights Act after it passed the Senate unanimously and overwhelmingly in the House. That is not ancient history. But I think to get through this period and to get back to that, we're going to have some big fights in terms of getting folks out to vote. And so I want to thank everyone who is a part of this. I know that this is not a partisan act. What I'm saying is that by engaging in our democracy, we can fight back to try and make sure that we pass legislation that will protect our democracy. And everything I said, from automatic voter registration to banning partisan gerrymandering to having the same laws nationwide for early voting, vote by mail, registration, everything I said is not a partisan issue. It would not benefit Democrats any more than it would benefit Republicans. And there are some arguments in some cases that in some areas it would certainly hurt us, right? But what I'm saying here is that as folks who believe in the democracy, that our conversation has to not just be about the fight now, it has to be about what's going to come afterwards and what we're going to do to make sure that we never have to have these conversations again. Because trust me, they will not stop in 2026. If they're not successful in rigging this election, they will try to rig the election in 2028. They will keep doing it for as long as they can until something stops them. And I want to be clear, I don't think that the Supreme Court will be that backstop. I think we will be. And so I've been inspired by listening to some of the folks who've been on this call already. Carol, I want to tell you how much I appreciate you. It's just incredibly important that we all have these conversations now and that we have a plan. They came in with a plan, obviously, of what they were going to do. We have to come out of this with a plan. And I appreciate you for being a part of that.
Thank you so much. I see two of our all-stars have now joined us as well. So thank you, Colin, for the work that you're doing, for stepping up to run, and for staying in the fight. I am honored to call you a friend and glad to be in the fight with you. So thank you. Next up, we have Point Counterpoint, Eric Swalwell, California. So as a representative in Washington, Eric has served 8 years on the House Intelligence Committee, where he was the chairman and ranking member overseeing the CIA. On the Intelligence Committee, helped lead the House investigation into Russia's interference in the 2016 election, and later the first and second impeachments of Donald Trump. As a member of the House of Democrat leadership team, Eric was on the House floor on January 6th. A week after the attack, he was appointed as the House impeachment manager for the former president's Senate trial. He now serves, and Eric, you can correct me if this isn't updated, so apologies in advance, but I believe you serve on the House Judiciary and Homeland Security Committee. You're also chairman emeritus and founder of Future Forum, which is a group of young Democratic members focused on issues and opportunities for millennial Americans. Also the founder and co-chair of the Bipartisan Critical Materials Caucus and Personalized Medicine Caucus. And every day we watch you just working like hell to save our democracy.
Oh, yeah.
So, Eric, if I left out some committee, I just totally appreciate you being on to help us support Center for Common Ground and our work. So,
Well, thank you, Carol. Thank you to the Center for Common Ground. I'm out with my family right now for dinner, but I was not going to miss this. And you got me away from dinner on Sunday night with my family, and you got Colin Allred away from the TV watching football. All of this is, and to really put a exclamation point on what Colin was talking about, it's so critical that we pass Prop 50 in California, because the rig districting effort in Texas right now is an effort not to stand on the values of the big brutal bill or the massive deportations or the more and more conflicts that have been added to the map as grocery prices soar and jobs numbers fall. No, they're not going to this midterm election wanting to make the case for what they've done or what they've achieved. They're just trying to make it harder for Democrats to win. And what Gavin Newsom and California Democrats are doing is saying, we're not going to fight these battles anymore with one hand tied behind our back. And too often, it's the upper hand that we have tied behind our back. So we're all in to match Texas for whatever they are able to take. I think it's going to be about 5 seats in California. That's on the ballot on November 4 in California, this upcoming November. And so every effort right now in California, every dollar, every bit of energy is going toward getting that passed because winning the midterms is everything. It's where we have the power of the purse, we have the support, we have the oversight power. It gives us the best shot at having free and fair elections in 2028. I'm all in because I have an 8-year-old, a 6-year-old, and a 3-year-old. And as a former prosecutor, I am just sick and tired of parents of my generation having to raise a mass shooter generation of children who are terrified and go to school and go through these drills and live in fear because they don't believe the adults are able to protect them. That's an issue that has motivated me since I went to Congress. That's why I ran for president back in 2020. And I just want to tell you, recently, as I've been going around the country doing town halls in Republican districts, a substitute teacher came to one of my town halls, and she told me that recently in a classroom of hers, a 10-year-old boy asked her on a Monday morning when she was starting the week to replace his teacher. The boy said, "Do you know where to put us?" And she looked at him kind of curiously, and she said, I don't know what you're talking about. He said, "Do you know where to put us?" If there's a shooter in the classroom, our teacher knows where to put us. Did she tell you where we're supposed to go? That's what our children are asking adults right now is, can you protect us? And so this midterm election, as we see school shootings, and there was one last week, continue to be on the rise, we can pass background checks. We can pass an assault weapons ban. We can make sure our kids, the most vulnerable in our communities, are protected from the most dangerous weapons landing in the hands of the most dangerous people. We just have to flex when we have power. And that's a larger issue I want to just briefly tell you about. I believe Democrats are not in power right now because we were perceived as being weak when we had power. No mom in America thought her kids were safer in their classroom when we had the White House, the Senate, and the House, because although we passed an assault weapons ban and background checks in the House, it was blocked in the Senate. And it was blocked by Democrats who stood on the filibuster to prevent those two and so many other pieces of legislation from passing. We have to flex because the American people are behind us. And if we fight for popular policies the way that Republicans fight for unpopular policies, we will be trusted to lead again. So that's what you all are doing on this call. That's what I'm all in to do. Carol, you and I have been arm in arm for many of these past few elections. We've seen victories, we've seen defeat, but we know the stakes and the one that's coming up. And I just want to tell you one piece of advice is you talk to activists and those who are demoralized. To activists, tell them we need you to go one rung higher from what you've done in the past. If we all go one rung higher, if you never have knocked on a door before, knock on a door. If you've never made a contribution before, make a contribution. If you've never gone to a local council meeting or never gone and spoken at a council meeting, go and speak at a council meeting. Exercise that democracy muscle of yours because we're going to need it all the way till next November. And to those who are still demoralized and feel defeated about what happened the last election, I tell them, look, I know why you're upset. I know why you're concerned. I know why you may not want to fight right now, but I'm going to fight for you. And I'm going to keep marching toward the ballot box. And when you're ready, I'm going to put my arm out and we're going to link up and you're going to join me because I know the stakes, you know the stakes, and we're not giving up until we win. So thank you all again for letting me be a part of this. We've got work to do, but I'm just doing it and it's all of you. So thanks again, Carol.
Eric, thank you so much, and say thanks to your family for letting you take a break to be with us.
I will, of course.
Really
My pleasure.
appreciate you. Thanks. All right,
Thank
we
you.
are certainly going to vary a little bit from the run of show that we've put out because we've got Senator Richard Blumenthal, one of my favorite folks, who works so hard to get work done in the Senate. And he has been wonderful about Center for Common Ground from the very earliest of asks about joining these galas and helping us with this work. So Richard Blumenthal has a father who fled Nazi Germany at age 18 and a mother who left Nebraska's farmland to become a social worker. He was raised with a deep dedication to public service, a duty to give back by helping others, and a bedrock belief in hard work. Senator Blumenthal enlisted in the Marine Corps Reserves in 1970. And truly, I could go on for pages and pages and pages of everything you've done to support the democratic way of life that we all love. It's from you, your children, your son, of course, in our own legislature. Dick, I am so proud always to call you a friend, and I am so grateful for your supporting the work of Center for Common Ground.
Thank you so much, Carol. Being on this call is really very special to me. First of all, anytime I get to spend time with you is a good day and a good evening. And luckily for all of us, Carol lives not far from any of us because Connecticut's a small state and she does so much good on the national scene. But here in Connecticut, she is a force, a real force for good. And that's what Center for Common Ground is in our democracy. It's an example of citizen engagement that is really going to be the savior of our democracy. And let me just come right to the point. I'm honored to follow Colin and Eric, and I agree with everything they have just told you. I've spent the day, as I spent yesterday, and I spend every weekend, going from one corner of Connecticut to another. And what I hear is people wanting a path. They want a way to make a difference. What can we do? What can we do is the most common question I'm asked. And what I tell them is engage with organizations like Center for Common Ground, engage with the organizations that are suing the Trump administration. Not winning every one, but they are stopping some of the worst and they are making a difference. Engage in voter registration in every state, not just in one state or another. Support voter registration. Get people to vote. We have local elections coming here in Connecticut. I've just left several fundraisers for local candidates. I've told them local elections are the building blocks. You heard Eric talk about muscle. Well, I'm a runner and a swimmer, and I know the way to build muscle is to use it. If you don't use it, it atrophies. That's the democratic muscle we need to exercise. And it's not just one election, it is this local election and then 2026 and 2028. And your energy and your dedication are an example. You know, courage is contagious. Cowardice is infectious as well. And I see cowardice literally every day in the United States Senate on the part of my Republican colleagues who know better. Believe me, they know better than what's happening, eliminating vaccine access and scientific research, abandoning the fight against Russia in Ukraine, the cryptocurrency scandal. We don't have enough time tonight to go through all of what America should rise up and reject. And most important, the autocracy, the threat to our civil rights and liberties, including from masked agents in unmarked cars seizing people without a warrant, not even probable cause, whether it's in factories or churches or doctors' offices, and yes, in courtrooms. This kind of threat to our democracy is just unparalleled, along with putting National Guard on our streets to do local police enforcement and reorienting our entire military in that direction. We need an all-court press, the kind of leadership you are providing, people standing up and speaking out. The indivisible rallies are great. They provide energy and the support for resistance in every form is absolutely necessary at this point in our history. Carol made mention of my dad, and my dad came here to escape the Holocaust in Germany. He was 18. He knew virtually no one. He had nothing more than a shirt on his back. He spoke no English. This country gave him a chance to succeed. And I once said to him, you know, nothing like the Holocaust can ever happen here. We're a democracy. And he said, you know, the Holocaust can happen anywhere that hate is allowed to prevail. And what we're seeing right now in the White House is the language of hate, the direction of hate. When the President of the United States says after the killing of a young man, a political activist, that it's the fault of the radical left and we have to, quote, beat the hell out of them. That is so fundamentally contrary to what we believe. And by contrast, the governor of Utah, also a Republican, had a very different approach, as everybody here knows. And his idea that we need to be unified, to cool the rhetoric, to make sure we try to come together, I think is the way Americans want to go. But for right now, without the overheated rhetoric, we need to be determined to fight. And I'll close on this note. I am more determined, I'm more energized, I am more inspired than ever before. I was Attorney General of the state of Connecticut for 20 years. I took on some big, powerful foes, big tobacco. I led the fight there, big pharma, big tech. And as United States Senator for the last 15 years, I've engaged in the same kind of fights to protect consumers and our democracy. I've never been prouder to be in this fight and more energized about it because this is our moment. This is our moment. We'll be judged by history in how energetically and determinedly we took on this fight. And so I am just grateful beyond words to all of you on this call. This morning, before I set off on my political wanderings, we welcomed to our home our 4 children and a few other family members, and our new granddaughter. She's about 5 weeks old. And it was the first family gathering where we celebrated her birth. And obviously, the thoughts in my mind were about what kind of world she will inherit from us. And I know there's so many on this call who are thinking the same way about what we leave behind us. The compact in America has always been we leave the nation better than we found it. We're in danger of failing in that promise. And I am just determined, more determined than ever in my whole career in public service, to make sure that we carry on this fight with increased energy and joy, a joy in this fight, because it is a historic one. And again, I just cannot thank you all enough for keeping hope alive and inspiring all of us with your determination. Thank you so much to all of you.
Thank you, Dick. Always a treat, and so proud, as I said, to be in this fight with you and the level of energy that you've got in all of this. It is certainly taking all of us together. So thank you. And a reminder that in order to do a lot of this work, it takes donations. Most of us are volunteers, but buying stamps, buying postcards, buying the data, buying the voter rolls, it takes money. And so I will once again put out the call to say, please, Josie, there we go. Josie just dropped the donation link into the chat. Please, this is such important work, and this is not the time for us to bail. So again, thank you, Dick.
And
And
we want to announce there is a $50,000 match that just dropped.
holy moly, that's terrific. That is a great thing.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you to whoever did it. Carol's absolutely right. Money won't, alone won't change elections, but it sure helps. And really, your determination combined with the resources is what will get the job done. Thank you so much.
Again, thank you so much, Senator. All right. Next up, we have we are taking a break from the politicians. We have an amazing musician and composer. You heard her at the very start. This is Marie-Tree Garrett. She is classically trained and self-taught multi-instrumentalist, vocalist, and composer who's lived in New York for over 20 years as a full-time working musician, which is no easy feat. She sang backup for Barbra Streisand and Michael Amati, composed music for the Washington Ballet, and is in the Soul Folk Experience. It's a band composed of multi-instrumentalists, vocalists, and writers. She's scored several films, theater pieces, apps, and many live theater shows in New York, and has traveled extensively as a solo musician with ensembles. So I want to highlight Marie-Tree and Marie-Tree's story a bit. So Marie-Tree, I know you're there somewhere. There she is.
Here, hello.
Hey, thank you again for joining us. And I look forward to hearing you tell a bit about your story, and then we'll come up with a video as well.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate you and Andrea and the Center for Common Ground so much. And hello, everyone. As Carol said, I'm Marie-Tree Garrett. I'm a full-time musician and music therapist. And my parents were from Jackson and Greenville, Mississippi, and they moved out in 1959, sort of at the height of all of the madness, to California. And so I grew up in California, and the vote was always really important in my house. As a child, my parents would take me with them just so that I could see the process, and they talked about how people had died and how people had fought for these rights and how important it was. And several years ago, I met Merle Evers at my church. I was, well, it's not my church, I just happened to play there. And we started talking, and I just had a million questions for her, but I was so blown away by the work of people of that generation that they just kept going and they didn't run from it. They stood up, fought the good fight, and continue to do so. And so I am raising my brother's children. He passed away several years ago, and now I take them with me when I go to vote. So the tradition continues, and of course we have 50 going on here in California, so it's a really, really important time. And my parents were always really sure to impress upon us how important it is for midterm elections and the smaller and the special elections. So I'm so grateful to be with you all, and I'm so inspired just listening to all of you speak about all of the things that are being done and need to be done. And I'm really excited to be in this fight with you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Marie-Tree. I am so glad that you've joined us.
I'm so grateful to be here.
All right, so I am not sure what just happened to the video. Hold on a second.
In my mind, I'm going to Carolina. Can't you just see the sunshine? Can't you just feel the moon shining? Ain't it just like a friend of mine to hit me from behind? And I'm going to Carolina in my mind. Karen, she's a silver sun. You best walk away and watch it shining. Watch her watch the morning come. A silver tear appearing. Now I'm crying, ain't I? I'm going to Carolina in my mind. There ain't no doubt in no one's mind that love's the finest thing around. Whisper something soft and kind. Hey, babe, the sky's on fire and I'm dying. Well, I'm going to Carolina in my mind. In my mind, I'm going to Carolina. Can't you just see the sunshine? Can't you feel the moon shining? Ain't it just like a friend of mine to hit me from behind? And I'm going to Carolina in my mind. Dark and silently last night, think I might have heard the highway calling. Geese in flight and dogs that bite. Signs that might be omens say I'm going. Well, I'm going to Carolina in my mind. Now the holy host of others standing around me. Still I'm on the dark side of the moon. And it seems like it goes on like this forever. You must forgive me. I'm up and going to Carolina in my mind. In my mind, I'm going to Carolina. Can't you just see the sunshine? Can't you feel the moon shining? Ain't it just like a friend of mine to hit me from behind? And
Marie Tree. That was absolutely exquisite.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing your gifts and your talent with us. It just is just such a treasure. And you probably heard then that we have someone who has given a $50,000 match for this. So this is even better.
Thank
So
you so
thank you
much.
again, and thank you.
Of
And
course.
next, thank you. So next we have the amazing Nidra Marie Taylor, who is an actor. She's got her MFA from Actors Studio Drama School. You may have seen her on Broadway in The Book of Mormon or Marvin's Room. Off Broadway, she's performed in Good Bones, Minority, The House That Will Not Stand, The Underlying Chris, Mr. Burns. My God, the list goes on for a while because she's amazing. And on television, Rose Calloway on Invasion, Brilliant Minds, Elsbeth, NCIS New Orleans, Orange is the New Black, Random Acts of Flyness, Jessica Jones, and more. And so, Nidra, I am so grateful for you to join us and share your talents with us and to share your story with us. It's just a treasure to have you here. So thank you.
Thank you, Carol. Good evening, everyone. I'm so honored, Carol, that you asked me to join you tonight at this inspiring gathering for the Center for Common Ground. As a Broadway and television actor, I've spent most of my life telling stories, but tonight I want to share a story that isn't written in a script or played out on a stage. It's a story that begins in Virginia, where my maternal family comes from and continues right here in this very moment with all of us. Virginia, as we all know, is a place with deep roots. It's home of the capital of the Confederacy, Richmond, where I attended the University of Richmond, go Spiders, and can remember stopping at a gas station near campus, seeing a display of Confederate flag keychains and demanding to see the manager. That manager never showed, but my intentions stayed aflame. My family's history in Virginia is one of resilience, survival, hope. Growing up in the segregated South, my mother often recounted stories to me of her and her family in Red Oak, Virginia, having to sit in the balcony at the movie theater. She remembers being a part of school integration, what a challenge that was for her and her four siblings. As we all know, Virginia is also a place where the right to vote, the most basic building block of our democracy, has been challenged and restricted again and again. And when I think about my mother, my grandparents, and great grandparents who worked and prayed and dreamed of a better future, I realize how urgent it is that we carry their torch forward. Now, as an actor, I know after 20 years of doing it that every audience wants to feel the truth. And the truth is this: democracy is not a spectator sport. It requires participation, it requires courage, it requires protection. Of course, that's where the Center for Common Ground comes in. Fighting voter suppression, reaching into communities that have been ignored, overlooked, intentionally silenced, empowering voters of color in the South to claim their voice, to cast their ballot, to shape their future. I think about the parallels between, let's say, theater and democracy. In theater, every single actor, every stagehand, every costume designer, they all matter. If one person doesn't show up, and I've been there, the story can't be told fully. Democracy works the same way. Every voter matters, every ballot is part of the story. And if we allow some voices to be silenced, we lose the full, rich, complicated, beautiful story of who we are as a people. That is why your support is so critical, because the Center for Common Ground is saying, no, we will not give up. We will not be silent or allow our democracy to shrink. We will expand it. We'll defend it. We'll carry the vision of justice forward. So tonight, I'm asking you, not as an actor, but as a daughter of Virginia, to give generously. If you've ever been moved by a story on stage, if you've ever felt the power of voices rising together, then you know what's at stake. Our collective story is still being written, and your generosity helps ensure it's a story of justice, of dignity, of freedom, and of hope. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for standing with the Center for Common Ground. Thank you, Carol, for having me. And at a personal level, thank you from my ancestors for giving so that every voice can be heard and every vote can be counted.
Thank you so very much, Nidra. a daughter of Virginia. I love that. I will remember that. Our next guest, we are now moving directly south of Virginia, and we are heading to North Carolina. Our next guest is Justice Anita Earls. Anita Earls is an American civil rights attorney. She served as an associate justice of the North Carolina Supreme Court since 2019. And before that, she was the executive director of the Southern Coalition for Social Justice, as well as a deputy assistant attorney general in the Civil Rights Division of the United States Department of Justice during the Clinton administration. So Justice Earls has been on the front lines in the fight. She knows what's at stake, and it is wonderful that she has played so many roles. Good evening, Justice Earls.
Well, good evening, and thank you so much for inviting me to have just a little bit of time with you to focus on what's happening in North Carolina. I have been so moved and inspired by the speakers who came before me, and I feel like they've said it all, and so I'm not sure what I can add except to tell you some specifics about North Carolina and what's been happening here. And what I want to share is that I was a civil rights attorney for 30 years before running for the court, and litigated voting rights cases in Virginia as well as many other states in the South. And I saw from that work that traditionally there's always been a two-pronged assault and I think initially or originally or through most of my work it was assault on the rights of African Americans and Latino voters to cast a ballot, but there's always been vote suppression combined with some kind of gerrymandering. So you both keep people from voting and you rig the system, rig the structures of the democracy so that even if they do vote, their votes won't count fairly. And sadly, and to some degree, I think this kind of bears true. If any of you remember the name Lonnie Guinier, another a really brilliant voting rights attorney whose footsteps I followed in, she talked about how Black voters are the canary in the coal mine. They were these, in essence, these vote suppression tactics were tried on Black voters, but people should have had an inkling that they were going to use them more broadly. So Black voters are kind of the warning sign that if things are foul in the environment, it's going to hurt everyone. And that is exactly what we've seen in North Carolina. I say that because we are ground zero for testing out some pretty outrageous vote suppression tactics. So I just came from an event honoring my colleague, Justice Allison Riggs, and some of you may have heard of what happened in 2024 in her election, where the first step to vote suppression was to require voters to cast provisional ballots, and then there needed in the 9 days after the election there needed to be a ballot curing process. So these are people who got up in the morning, went to the polls, wanted to exercise their right to vote, knew who they wanted to vote for, but because they didn't either have proper ID or there was some issue with their registration, they had to cast a provisional ballot, but it could be cured if they could prove that they weren't fraudulent, kind of a you're guilty until you prove you're innocent approach. But if they could prove that they were legitimate voters, then they could vote. Their votes would count. And it was the work of groups across the state, including many nonpartisan nonprofit C3 and C4 groups that did the hard, incredible work of reaching out to voters to get them to cure their ballots, that ultimately they cured more ballots than the margin of victory for Justice Riggs. So she won by ultimately when the canvas, when all the votes that were going to be counted, and there were plenty that were, I would suggest, were illegitimately thrown out. But when the ballots were counted, she won by 734 votes out of 5.5 million votes cast. So, you know, if you do talk to folks who think their vote doesn't matter, there are plenty of really close elections, even in very large jurisdictions and large electorates. But that was only stage one. Stage two was litigation from her opponent trying to throw out ballots. He wanted to throw out the ballots of over 80,000 voters because their last four of their social security or their driver's license number wasn't on their registration. He also wanted to throw out the ballots of military and overseas voters. And I guess what you need to understand is I serve with 4 Republicans. We have a 7-member state Supreme Court. We are all elected in partisan elections for 8-year terms. And I serve with 4 Republicans who ruled that those military and overseas ballots should not be counted, even though those voters complied with every rule that they were given at the time they voted. And it was only because a federal court stepped in and said, there are very serious equal protection and due process problems with changing the rules of the election after the election in order to get the outcome you want. So the federal court said you can't do that, and Justice Riggs was sworn in to take her seat. But the court also said you can do all that before the next election. So that means right now in North Carolina, we face a really important battle going on right as we speak to make sure that the registrations of voters who don't have the last four of their social, that they get, the state board of elections is calling it cured or repaired, registration repair. But a lot of people don't realize because the registration repair list is different from the Griffin list that was challenged in the election. And we also know that in our municipal elections and in 2026 and going forward, those military and overseas voters will have to show an ID, which is something that if you're military and overseas in any other state in the country, you don't have to do that. But in North Carolina, you will. So there's a huge public education effort that we need. And we just know that we need to be registering voters now in this, so that people's voices will be heard. But let me also talk to you about gerrymandering, because again, I feel like North Carolina was ground zero. The case in which the U.S. Supreme Court decided that they would not touch partisan gerrymandering came from North Carolina, Rucho versus Common Cause. And the US Supreme Court said, well, we're not going to address it, but state Supreme Courts can. And ultimately, as new districts were drawn following the 2020 census, litigants brought to our court a challenge to our state congressional districts and our state House and state Senate districts. And a trial court, hearing the evidence, found that they were extreme partisan gerrymanders. The 2022 Supreme Court said that violates your rights under the state constitution. And we required the legislature to redraw. North Carolina sent 7 Democrats and 7 Republicans to Congress after that redraw when fair maps were in place. But then we had an election and our court changed hands. It had previously been 4 Democrats, 3 Republicans. And understand, the court opinion said, doesn't matter who does it, these are the tests for gerrymandering. And under our state constitution, extreme partisan gerrymandering is unconstitutional. The new court took power and reheard that case, which is just extraordinary. It's not happened before in the history of our court. It sort of violates all sorts of legal principles, not only stare decisis, but also law of the case. Once you decide what the law is in a particular case, you're supposed to continue to apply that law in that case. But our court reheard and said, they didn't say they aren't gerrymanders. They said, well, you know, we just, it's not for us to say, it's up to the legislature. We as a court have no power to constrain the legislature. So the legislature redrew, and in the next election, we sent 10 Republicans and 4 Democrats to Congress. And if we had kept the 7-7 delegation, right now today, the US House of Representatives would be in the control of Democrats. So that is the impact that state Supreme Court races have had, not only on, and I could talk about what happened in the state legislature, but it obviously impacts the entire country. And while other states have referenda and can have citizens initiatives, we do not have that in North Carolina. So the only path to a democracy in this state that fairly reflects the voting strength and voting patterns of the voters of this state is through the courts, is to come back to, is to again have a state Supreme Court that is committed to the principle that extreme partisan gerrymandering violates the state constitution. And so fortunately, Justice Riggs, herself also a voting rights attorney, is on our court. I am running for re-election in 2026. And in 2028, 3 Republican seats on our court are up, and we can flip the court if Democrats are successful in carrying those seats. And that would be before the next round of redistricting. But I think what I want to leave you with, there's, you know, as a judicial candidate, there's a lot I can't say, and I can't, but I can give you status of cases and I can give you updates on what's happening here. And as a political candidate, what I can tell you is that I know, you know, I run statewide, so I have to reach those millions of voters across the state. And in order to do that, from my perspective, there are sort of three legs to the stool that I need. One is I have to have a strong campaign myself. And that's you know, all the things that go into having a strong campaign. I need the state party because we run as partisan. And it's interesting, you know, I don't think we'll have a repeat in North Carolina of the $100 million that was spent in Wisconsin. But I do know that we will have spending in this race more than we've ever seen before in North Carolina. So I need a strong Democratic Party, and I need the third rung, vitally important, is the C3 and C4 tables that do that nonpartisan voter registration, voter protection work. You know, people trust people that they know. Right. And it's one thing for me to go to a community and talk about my background and why our courts matter. But when there are people in community, the people they trust, who are giving them that message and urging them to vote and have their voice heard, it makes a huge difference. And there are so many important constituencies in this state whose voices have not been heard. You know, I told you about those 80,000 voters that currently need to repair their registration list. Well, you should know that roughly 70% of those 80,000 are registered Democrats. And if you're an African American voter in North Carolina, you are 3 times more likely to be on that list. I know that students, in particular, people who registered when they were in college, on their college campuses, are another universe that is more likely to be disenfranchised by this current situation. So we know that we have a huge battle ahead, but I also understand and believe that working together, we can protect our democracy, and it is groups like Center for Common Ground and the other groups that you partner with and the work that you do in the states that ultimately is what will save us as a country. So I'm grateful to you for your work, and thank you so much for giving me this chance to give you an update on North Carolina.
Justice Earl, thank you so very much for joining us. I am delighted, absolutely delighted that we will again be working in North Carolina. And I don't know if you've had an opportunity to meet the head of our Charlotte Democracy Center, Brandon Rivers, but Brandon was instrumental in helping us bring Mecklenburg County back into the land of voting. When Center for Common Ground worked in Mecklenburg in 2020, Mecklenburg has the highest number of registered Black voters. There were 239,000 of them then. In 2020, 163,000 turned up. the people said, oh, we don't need you, we've got this. And in 2022, 97,000 of 239,000 voters showed up. So people there decided, well, maybe we really do need you. And we found Brandon. He is an amazing, amazing, amazing worker. And in 2024, Mecklenburg turned out 174,000 Black voters. Brandon was also instrumental in helping us recruit canvassers and phone bankers in Congressional District 1. And that was one of the two rural districts that Center for Common Ground won in 2024. So everyone, I give you the man is everywhere, Brandon Rivers.
Listen. Thank y'all so much for having me on. Listen. It is a pleasure to hear from so many great speakers. It is an honor to be on this call tonight. So I'm gonna jump right in. For those who do not know me, my name is Brandon Rivers, and I was born right here in Charlotte, North Carolina. I was born in inner city Charlotte, North Carolina. Charlotte has definitely grown. North Charlotte is definitely not North Charlotte anymore. But in my life, I've dedicated my life to making sure that communities like the one I grew up in has a real voice in shaping our future. Over the past few years, like Ms. Miller has stated, I've worked on campaigns, advocacy groups, community outreach, and civic engagement, you name it. But the common thread has always been about building people power. I want to take a step back. First of all, I'm a father, right? I'm a father. I have an 8-year-old daughter named Brandy. She's the love of the love of my life. And she's the main reason that I really focus on making sure that our future is better, because I know I won't always be here. I'm also a neighbor, and I'm also someone who sees firsthand how hard it can be when people feel disconnected or shut out of that political process. I love what Justice Riggs just stated about, right? She spoke about voter registration and voter education and how those are challenging in marginalized communities. But a lot of time, marginalized communities can be anything from just not an area where there are people of color. These could be college campuses. These could be high schools. This Friday, I was at West Charlotte High School registering and pre-registering high school students. Just like she stated before, on our new voter registration applications, you have to have the last 4 of your social, or you have to have your driver's license number. These high school students a lot of them don't know the last 4 of their social, right? A lot of them, their parents ain't giving them their social, right? They don't have driver's license. It's not a requirement. It's not a law to have a driver's license. So some of these students, their applications were not complete because they did not have the required information. They had to get their phones out. They had to call their families to get the last 4 of their social. One mom was like, what do you need it for? Right? And we're just filling out an application to get them registered to vote, not getting them out to the polls, just the first step of getting them out to vote. College campuses, just what Justice Riggs just spoke about. Nita Earls, I'm sorry, Justice Earls just spoke about college campuses being marginalized. We do voter registration on college campuses at our Charlotte Democracy Center, and we work in surrounding areas throughout the state. A lot of these college campuses, their student IDs are not even eligible or not even acceptable IDs for them to get out and vote in North Carolina, because we have photo ID here in North Carolina. So we have to get the Board of Elections to actually come out to these college campuses so we can print out IDs for these college students to get out and vote. They want to vote. They just find it challenging. So understanding that when these students come to on their college campuses to vote, they have to update their voter registration so they can register to vote on campus. A lot of these students don't even know their campus address. I don't even remember my campus address when I was at North Carolina Central University. And I was a political science major. So understanding that we go on these college campuses when they're moving in, and it is a long process. Registering someone in the community can be a lot easier. So also understanding that firsthand that I see this on a day-to-day basis, how this can be challenging. The work that we do is just not about voter registration. Voter registration is just one of the first steps in getting people out to vote. But we have more people registered to vote in North Carolina that are actually getting out to vote. So one of the biggest things that we want to focus on is voter education and voter empowerment, voter literacy, and civic engagement. What we do at our Charlotte Democracy Center, we, of course, again, we register voters, especially in communities that are sometimes overlooked. So we register voters. I'm inside the detention centers where we're registering people to vote. A lot of people don't even think they're eligible to vote when they're inside the detention center. They don't even know that the sheriff is an elected official, right? So we're going inside the detention centers, getting them registered to vote. We're working with the probation and parole officers to make sure that anybody that's on probation for a misdemeanor, because you can still vote in North Carolina if you're on probation or parole for a misdemeanor, that we're getting them registered to vote. A lot of times it's just misinformation. We have more people that are on probation for misdemeanor and offenses that do not understand that they have the power to vote as well. So we're making sure that we're providing a service for these people in these communities. We're at the roof above. We're at the Salvation Army. We're getting people that are just moving into Charlotte. We're at all the new apartment complexes because Charlotte, we're the 14th largest city in the United States. And I believe in the next about 10 to 20 years, we'll be top 10. We have thousands of people that move here on a day-to-day basis. So we want to be where they're at. We're at the Charlotte Public Transit Authority. And these are organizations that we have partnerships with, that I've been able to build partnerships with, where we go in and we're at all the transit authorities. So we're able to get on the transit bus. We have one of the largest transit systems in the entire nation, and we're able to set up and get people registered to vote, educated them about the importance of voting, update them about upcoming election days. You'll be surprised on how many times people don't know that we have elections every year in North Carolina, some of our municipalities. Training volunteers is one of the biggest things that we focus on as well at our Charlotte Democracy Center. We want to make sure that, just like Justice just spoke about, stating that we want people from their communities to do the work. You know, a lot of times we have volunteers and we have canvassers that are not from the community. They've never seen you in the community. And now you're sitting there telling them who to vote for. One of the biggest things we preach at our Charlotte Democracy Center is let's not be transactional. Let's be transformative, right? Let's not be transactional. Let's be transformative. You know, I want you to see me every month. You know, I want you, in a year, I want you to see me a few times. I don't want to just see me the first week before voting and then you don't see me after voting. And then you wonder why they don't want to speak to you. This doesn't make sense. And we want to hire people from their communities. You know, we have canvassers that coming from New Jersey and from Phoenix because they don't have a job. There's no money in local elections. What we speak about a little bit differently. We want to create a safe space for these people as well. You know, I've had volunteers speak to people in the community and say felons and those felons and ex-felons and ex-convicts. I said, let's use ex-offenders, right? You know, they're not convicts. They're not felons. They're ex-offenders. So understanding when we go in these communities, we want to make sure that we're not making them feel, hey, are you a felon? Why aren't you registered to vote? Are you a felon? I mean, that doesn't even sound right. What if he doesn't feel comfortable telling you that information, right? So understanding, we want to make sure we have trainings, that we have culturally diverse people in these communities as well. We speak about DEI with businesses. We need to make sure we have DEI in our organizations as well, right? A lot of time, I'm the only person of color in leadership in a lot of organizations. That's why I love the Center for Common Ground, because we're able to see a diverse sense of leadership. I know we've had a lot of long speakers, so I don't want to take too long. But just this year, we've registered hundreds, educated thousands of voters. We've held several community events and served thousands of residents. But also, one of the things that we focus on is we use an app called ActiveVote. ActiveVote is an app where people are able to download to find out what elected officials are, who their elected officials are in their community. You know, a lot of times, they don't know who the mayor in their community is. They don't even know what the mayor does. Some people don't know what the president does. I did a classroom presentation on college campuses. I asked them what the president does. They say he's the commander in chief. I said, what does that actually mean? Is he having like a tank and he's just driving it down the road? Like, what does that actually mean? He vetoes bills. Well, tell me what a bill is. So the same thing, a lot of them don't have the civic engagement or the civic education, right? But if I ask you who the president is, they'll know who they are. They'll know Chucks and Pearls, right? They'll know MAGA, but they don't know the benefits of actually voting. So that's one of the biggest things that we want to focus on. We also have surveys that we submit, that we have our community members submit. With these surveys, they ask, what issues matter the most to you? Did you have any issues when you went out to go vote? Right? Did you vote? Why did you not vote? And what can our Charlotte Democracy Center focus on? And what we do is I take this information, and I know all the elected officials in our area, especially local, and I speak to them, I have meetings with them and go over the information that our surveys go about. I have city councilmen that reach out and say, hey, what are those surveys saying? What are the people in the community saying? And I meet with them and have coffee and say, these are the issues that matter the most. Transportation is one of the biggest issues on one of our sides in Charlotte. It's not crime, it's not safety, it's not inflation, it's transportation. But they would not never know that because they don't have anybody on the ground. But we are on the ground. And that is the reason why the last thing is the reason I'm coming here tonight. We want people to donate as much as possible to support our Charlotte Democracy Center, to support all of our democracy centers, support the Center for Common Ground. You know, I always tell people, they say they don't care, local elections don't matter. Well, there's no money in local elections. If they put the same money in local elections that they put in general elections, I mean, it might be a better shot. You know, during general elections, you see Vice President Harris, she raised $20-30 million in 24 hours. We have local elected officials that can barely afford to go to the DNC. Right? We have local elected officials that barely can afford to pay their bills. So to continue to do this work, we have to have year-round organization. We're nonpartisan, so that gets us in the door. We have to be able to provide material. We have to be able to hire people, right? You know, if we don't have the money, we can't hire people to be on staff to be able to do the work, and then we don't have anybody to do the work. You know, I have a young daughter. I can't afford to volunteer. You know, I wish I could. I wish I came from a rich family, but unfortunately, I can't afford to volunteer at all times, right? So please, anything you guys can do, support as much as possible. Like I said, I don't want to take up too much of your time, but I love being on this call. We've had some great speakers, but let's just continue to do the work as much as possible. I love everyone.
Thank you, Brandon, and we love you. We are a family here at Center for Common Ground. Gabe, you got another song to play for us, so I would love to hear that song because we're going to be looking at the third state that we will be working in 2026. You've already heard Shenandoah now, and we've heard North Carolina, and now Georgia.
Georgia, Georgia, the whole day through, just an old sweet song keeps Georgia on my mind. Georgia on my mind. Georgia, Georgia, song of you comes as sweet and clear as moonlight through the pines. Other arms reach out to me, other smile so tenderly. Still in peaceful dreams I see the road leads back to you. Georgia, Georgia, no peace I find, just an old sweet song keeps Georgia on my mind. Georgia on my mind.
Incredible rendition. That was so wonderful. And now that gives me the opportunity to introduce Mr. Ray McClendon, who is from Georgia. Ray and I have been working together since 2020, and it is a match made in heaven. When I originally met Ray, he was with the Georgia State NAACP, and he has since moved on with Richard Rose, and they created Georgia Communities United for Justice. And well, I'm not going to say anymore. I want to let Ray talk to you about Georgia because it is most definitely on my mind as I look at 2026 and even now because Georgia's got municipals.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Andrea. And it's always a pleasure to be with you. You know, we're so proud to be in partnership with the Center for Common Ground. It's been a great partnership over the last 5+ years. And we have really grown and established an extraordinary partnership and coalition here in Georgia of over 24 different civic engagement groups have come together. And let me just say that everyone knows how extraordinary Center for Common Ground is, and Andrea in particular, but we need to go and also talk about the extraordinary staff that you have assembled. We love working with the staff. They're passionate about the work and getting the work done, and the great IT platform that you have. You know, we are all reliant upon your backbone technology infrastructure. That makes a difference when we are out either organizing voters, mobilizing voters, and educating voters. So we have looked to the Center for Common Ground over the years to be a strong partner in helping deliver effectively and efficiently for voter turnout. Now, since 2020, we've changed a lot of the way that we do civic engagement, and we recognize that civic engagement is no longer about just getting together 30 to 90 days before an election and turning out voters. Civic engagement has become a year-round operation. And that's why the Center for Common Ground is so important, because they are doing the research, the analysis, connecting the organizations together throughout the year. And as Andrea just mentioned, we're already looking toward 2026 here in Georgia. We have not only all of the congressional races as well as the Senator Ossoff's race, which is speculated to be the most expensive Senate race in the country next year. So there is a lot at stake next year here in Georgia, and the powers that be on the other side are already engaged on a local level. So we've got to do the same thing. But it goes beyond that. Senator Blumenthal said something that was very important, which is that it's not only the federal races that are important, but it's the local races. We have municipal elections across the state this year, and we're involved in those right now. And those are going to be important in 2025 because those races will help us build backbone infrastructure and engagement that leads into 2026. So it's important for us to support the Center for Common Ground now, begin to build those resources and be involved. We've seen this in past elections where we turned a number of municipal seats, county government, city government seats across the state that put more people, progressives in power, people that support the ideals that we all stand for in power, that help to make a difference. We know that on the other side, they are spending a lot of time with school boards, with local election boards and other things, that are entrenching them in these communities, and we've got to be prepared to engage the fight in those local arenas as well. So while we look to 2026, we are already working year-round, starting now for the races in 2025. We are fighting not only for engagement, but we know that voter suppression, as the justice mentioned early, voter suppression is going on all across the South. And I would say if we're not ground zero, as Justice said, North Carolina is, we're a close second, because Georgia, the state legislature here, each and every year does something to tweak and enhance voter suppression. And we, of course, have a Secretary of State's office that is in league with that strategy. We're looking at a 500,000 voters just this year to be scrubbed from the rolls, almost a 500,000 voters. So this is a constant problem, an uphill battle that we continue to fight. So it's important for us to not only look at the elections per se, but what we need to do to be involved in civic engagement year round, and not only what is done with the Center for Common Ground, but through the democracy centers and other engagement. It allows us to directly work on a local level to make a difference in people's lives right now, which will then allow us to increase that turnout. You know, we fell off in turnout in 2024 from 2020, and that made a huge difference. We've got to get that turnout back up in the Black community to the level that it was in 2020. And it's going to take year-round engagement to do that. And the support that you give to the Center for Common Ground allows us to work together in a more effective and efficient way. So we thank you for your time. I appreciate the opportunity to be here tonight, and just say, encourage everybody, whatever resources you can supply, you know that they're going to an organization that is not just dedicated, but has the integrity to make the commitments stick where they need to across the different states that we work together in. Thank you.
Thank you, Ray. Again, it has been a privilege and a pleasure working with you, Richard, and everyone you have introduced us to. It has been wonderful. As we are moving toward the end of our program, we have more people that we want to introduce to you who are our newer partners on our faith adjacent side. Our next guest is Mr. Fish Stark, who is the executive director of the American, let me get this right now, don't want to blow it, the American Humanist Association. I like that. We're all human. We have an association to which we can all belong. Now, when I read his bio, what I discovered is we have some things in common. He's an organizer. He's an educator. I think he's probably one of those rabble rousers too. And so, Fish, I want to welcome you to our gala.
Thank you so much, Andrea. Thank you for welcoming me. Good evening, everybody. My name is Fish Stark, and I'm the executive director of the American Humanist Association. And it's great to see so many people here to support the Center for Common Ground, and great in particular to see leaders representing different parts of the American religious tapestry. Because I think whether we're Christian, Muslim, Jewish, or humanist, regardless of the differences in our traditions, what connects us is a belief that every person has infinite worth and deserves to be treated with dignity. And that people can only truly live with dignity if their voices can be heard and if they have a true and equal stake in the decisions that govern their community. It was James Baldwin who said, "The place in which I'll fit will not exist until I make it." Nearly 250 years ago, American humanist Thomas Paine wrote in his Common Sense pamphlet, "These are the times that try men's souls." He was talking about life under tyranny and the psychological wound of knowing that you are living with something less than liberty. But he also said, we have it in our power to begin the world over again. Not let's wait around for somebody else to make things better. Not we have the power to change things a little bit. We have it in our power to begin the world over again. And those words toppled a king and built a nation where the ability of every citizen to lift our voice in praise or protest of our government is seen as sacred. And like all sacred things, American democracy requires all those who believe in it to continuously strengthen and protect it. And the story of America, I think, is the story of everyday heroes who believe in the equal dignity of every person coming together to demand we live up to those founding ideals, who fought for a democracy, who fought to expand who had the right to participate in it, and now who are fighting to defend it. It was American humanist John Dewey who said, democracy has to be born anew every generation. So I want to suggest that the fight we're in now isn't an aberration, but an American tradition. And by being here, we're not doing something radical, but simply embracing the legacy of a multiracial, cross-class, interfaith coalition of American heroes who fought to expand the franchise and writing its next chapter. And what is beautiful about the work being done at Center for Common Ground is the focus on educating and empowering voters of color at a time when racist systems and the people who uphold them still try to make judgments about who counts and who matters most in a democracy. But we know better, because we know our democracy is only as healthy as a person's equal right to participate in it. So it was humanist A. Philip Randolph, a pioneer in the Black humanist movement and chairman of the March on Washington, who said, a community is democratic only when the humblest and weakest person can enjoy the highest civil, economic, and social rights that the biggest and most powerful possess. Every postcard, every text, every phone call, every door knocked by the Center for Common Good gets us closer to that higher plane of human dignity. Frederick Douglass, another hero to the American humanist movement, had this to say that I think is important about the power of everyday citizens raising their voices. He said, liberty is meaningless where the right to utter one's thoughts and opinions has ceased to exist. That of all rights is the dread of tyrants. It's the right which they first of all strike down because they know its power. Thrones, dominions, principalities, and powers founded in injustice and wrong are sure to tremble if we are allowed to reason. That's why this work matters, because tyranny trembles in the shadow of a free people demanding to be heard. That's why I'm so glad to gather not just with courageous political leaders, but leaders of different faith and spirit traditions, because no matter what we consider sacred, no matter how we live out our beliefs, no matter whether our highest authority is a Holy Spirit or the human spirit, we know that right now is an urgent time to work for freedom. We know we cannot abide the sin of forcing our neighbors to live in silence, and we know that when, as the song goes, we can truly lift every voice and sing, the simple dignity and validation of having our voices heard and the power of a free people demanding to have their needs met can heal this broken moment in America. So thank you for being here. Thank you for being human. Thank you for supporting the Center for Common Ground, and let's keep doing all the good we can for each other.
Thank you, Tish. I am feeling so inspired now. That was wonderful. Now, our next guest, I believe, Jose, I may have met you on some Faithful Democracy calls, possibly earlier on. So Jose Moreno is the Director of Social Justice Reform, or the Director for Justice Reform at the Friends Committee on National Legislation. And I love how on the website you always explain for the uninitiative that's lobbying with Quakers. And every time I see that, it really, really, really makes me smile. The faith tradition, so rooted in the notion of peace and justice. Welcome, and thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thanks so much for having me, Andrea. Now, I have just been electrified by your speakers and everybody that's been invited, and I feel honored to join this amazing list of presenters. I wasn't sure how formal to get, so I stuck with my Shirley Chisholm shirt that I wore. Well, you can't see the spotlight. That I wore to a Quaker meeting today, in case you need somebody to vote for in the 1972 presidential campaign. I've been a lobbyist for over a decade, and I've been working in politics for close to 15 years, advocating for democracy reform, gun violence prevention, and justice reform. I was raised Catholic, but today I'm a devout Quaker. And if there's one thing I've noticed about working in politics, it's how high we build the barriers for the average American to engage and participate in political life, to feel they can influence our government. And that aside, the complexities of the problems and the options to solve them are rarely commonly understood among regular people. If you notice the difference between real problems and Congress's focus, let me remind you of 2023 when members of Congress were scrambling to send press releases and introduce legislation to protect gas stoves. According to issue one, House members in competitive races last year raised $10,900 a day. To put in context, that's a few $100 shy of my yearly salary as an AmeriCorps member when I was serving refugees in Jersey City, New Jersey in 2008. My first job out of college. The top two that are up for U.S. Senate races last year raised about $123,000 a day, daily. That number equals 3 times the average annual salary in the US, which is just under $40,000 a year. The corrosive influence of money has infected politics and leaves millions without a voice. Not only money, but lack of access to the voting booth, like inconsistent access to mail-in voting, a labyrinth of rules and laws that shut people out, and election day taking place midweek. The people who need the most change can't take off work to vote to affect that change. I think a lot about how these barriers to political participation fuel the feeling so many people have that no one cares about them or want to hear what they have to say. Growing up, I was surrounded by people who were not represented by their political leaders, who don't feel the government serves us. I was raised by Dominican parents just north of Harlem and Washington Heights, in a neighborhood in New York City called Inwood. I spoke Spanish at home and lived 2 floors above my grandmother. Not to brag, but I was born just south of the Bronx, the borough that birthed hip hop. Paired with the genre of salsa, it is some of the best music the planet has seen. Some of the hip hop music I listened to had violent themes, but many rightly called these rappers our first reporters, who were also poets recounting the stories of the streets. New York City in the 80s had a reputation, and I was proximate to shootings and violence. I didn't think much of it. It's just the way it was. I love my community. Regularly go back to visit family in the Dominican Republic. It was in boom boxes, things that took up a whole wall, home cooked meals. Those flights were distinctive, to say the least. My family's working class background is not so dissimilar to a coal mining family in West Virginia or a farmer's household in West Texas. Well, besides that, we were Black and mostly spoke in Spanish. But I feel that the class struggle and anti racism are closely related. I sometimes think about my role as a manager at FCNL and the job applications I review. Our program assistant candidates are very impressive. I've met student leaders that recruit their classmates to lobby Congress in Washington, D.C., hundreds of miles from home, or community advocates that persuade their neighbors to join them in lobbying Congress. This is refreshing and not what I was raised with, unfortunately. I used to tell colleagues that my first contact with a U.S. Senator happened when I had a job interview in 2011. Many people just like me feel like these systems don't serve us. We don't know how to engage with them. We might vote, but government isn't for us. This is a sentiment shared by millions. People do not feel heard. A young man with a wife and 2 young children was assassinated. This victim said some pretty heinous things. But I'm a Quaker and I have a firm belief that every person has the inviolable peace of God in their spirit. Violence is never the answer. Whether at a speech in Utah, a traffic stop in Falcon Heights, Minnesota, or in Gaza. We live in a country that has never had more acrimony and partisanship. Being a member of a political party or leveling the scathing charge using the words the right or the left are supposed to make you shudder. Because they want you to believe that those people over there are your enemy and not actual problems. When you add the reality that those able to afford access get swift representation, while regular people get mailers and targeted ads, this reality becomes heavy for millions. We live in a society where violence has become normalized and guns have proliferated. When words seem to not be enough and close to 500 million guns pervade our communities, tragedy can follow. I see the intersection between major discontent with government and an electorate unable to see avenues to those important words in the First Amendment that read, to petition the government for redress of grievances. I deeply fear Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s words, a rise of the unheard. I wish the recent tragedy in Utah was the first and last of its kind, but Governor Shapiro's house suffered an arson attack in Pennsylvania during Passover, no less. A Minnesota lawmaker was killed, and yes, it is worth mentioning that many people fear that masked men in ballistic vests will take them away because those in power have branded working class people as violent criminals because of the color of their skin. The answer to tragedy and the answer to violence is conversation. We need to look to our neighbors and love our neighbors, no exception, as the book of Leviticus in the Hebrew scriptures teaches us. We must keep engaging in political discourse and assume good intentions. I'll add in my own lived experience. We should make it a practice to listen to those most excluded from power. One of the strongest ways to, in the words of the Leadership Conference, make our country as good as its ideals is uplifting the voices that see the crack in the foundation. Organizations like the Center for Common Ground, who do just that. It might seem bleak, and I suspect things will get worse. But I often go back to my two favorite passages of Scripture. The Christian Bible says in Hebrews chapter 11, verse 1, now faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. You can be a Christian, atheist, or of a different faith, and this can resonate strongly with you. People struggling against slavery didn't know where they were on the timeline. Abolitionists in 1801 struggled just as strongly as those on December 1st, 1862, just weeks before the Emancipation Proclamation. We must have the faith of our convictions to keep moving towards a more just future. The second scripture that is probably more powerful than the first in my life, and it's why I'm a Quaker today, is James chapter 2, verses 14 through 17. And I want to read it to you because I think it speaks with authority about what I think religion should propel us to do. What does it profit, my brethren, if someone says he has faith but does not have works? Can faith save him? If a brother or sister is naked and destitute of daily food, and one of you says to them, depart in peace, be warmed and filled, but you do not give them the things which are needed for the body, what does it profit? Thus, also faith by itself, if it does not have works, is dead. This scripture is so powerful because it obligates us to do good, always. This is where I get controversial. I know that God loves me and you, but I'm more interested in the example of Jesus to make this life we are gifted at least a little better for our neighbor. I'm privileged to worship in silence with friends, waiting for the presence of the Lord to speak through us. I'm equally privileged to stand with Jews, Muslims, and Christians of different denominations, working every day to make this country better. We come together for direct action, to lobby Congress, and hold vigils for Americans who will be harmed by negative policies. I'm reminded of Quakers and people of faith, or no faith, coming to our vigils to protect Medicaid during the first Trump presidency. People of faith have been an integral part of our democracy, encouraging elected officials to better serve people at the margins for decades. I find it even more potent when people of faith form relationships with people of no faith or unsure faith to propel society forward to make our democracy stronger and more just. It doesn't just happen. I leave you with the words of a weighty friend, as Quakers say. Parker Palmer, a request. Let your life speak. Thank you.
Thank you so very much. And again, Janice Gay and I, the other day, we were talking about that very theme, faith without works. One of the things that our democracy centers do, because they are year round, is if people need food, they help them get food. We even have a democracy center in Lynchburg where they did a lot of work with people who are homeless. So they started building homes. My last guest that I want to introduce you to is Bishop Ray Johnson. And I find it very interesting. I did not know this about you, that you have degrees in business and economics from the University of Maine. And I'm like, okay, fine. This is wonderful. And it explains a lot about what you do and how within your own church is, you have built this whole, we will do the works to help our fellow man, woman who is less than or has less than. So, Bishop Ray, can you turn on your camera? We are ready for you.
I am
And like,
doing go right ahead, Andre. I'm doing my very best to get my camera on, but it just seems like it
camera
just
is having a bad moment.
it sure is. I don't know why it's choosing to do that, but I'm going to do the very best I can.
Hello, good evening, Bishop. I
Good
am
evening.
thrilled to have you. The floor is yours, sir.
Well, wonderful. Thank you all so much for having me on tonight. And if you will just excuse some of my background, of course, it's Sunday evening. I'm watching football and taking a moment to enjoy some of that. But I'm glad to be with you tonight. I've certainly enjoyed all of what I've heard tonight, just in terms of the engagement, politics a year round, and engaging in the electoral process. And so, absolutely, I am a Commanders fan, big time. And we're a little bit concerned, even though I have on blue tonight. The Cowboys won. My daughter is a Cowboy fan, so she's waiting to talk to me. Let me just speak a little bit toward the idea of what we're just discussing tonight. And I wear several different hats in regards to what we do in our ministry, and indeed the work that we do in working with the homeless community and working with those who are less fortunate, the low to moderate income in our areas. And so, so much of what I heard tonight is so critically important to be engaged, not only at the executive level in presidential races and statewide races, but it's so important to be engaged in local races. I often like to remind people that all politics is local. And and that you hear this term NIMBY, not in my backyard, well, you'll come to find in many instances that your quality of life or quality of living happens right in your local area with your city council, with those who are on your school board, and with those who represent you in your state house. And so, having said that, some of the work that we do is helping people engage in a way where they become upwardly mobile. And so, as a part of our First Foundation's home ownership program that we do, all of that I explain to people is block granted to the state. So it matters who your representative is, and it matters who your governor is. I'm not ashamed to say that one of my proteges, Candace Holly, is the political manager for Abigail Spanberger. She started with me when she was in high school, and I was her high school Bible teacher. Absolutely, Candace is a protege of mine. I pretty much taught her all of what she knows. Most people are not necessarily, Andrea, familiar with my political background in terms of I was Congressman Scott's very first intern. While in Maine, by the way, I was a Washington Center Fellow and a Congressional Black Caucus intern and a White House intern. This would be 91, 2, and 3 during my sophomore, junior, and senior years of college. And so Maine exposed the opportunity for me to be engaged in politics. And this is what gives me kind of the impetus, if you will, to speak to the point that all politics is local. Here in Virginia, as you know, we're in a very critical race that will determine the future, not only here in Virginia, but I believe the nation and the world. We often hear that phrase that says, as Virginia goes, so goes the nation. And so the current election here is going to be critically important, but that won't be possible until we get out the vote. And I heard one of the gentlemen mention that many within our communities, when I say our, I'm talking Black and brown communities, may have a sense of apathy. And what the Center for Common Ground does is ensure that individuals are engaged and involved so that there's training, there's education, there's development, but also from a policy perspective. Just a few quick points. You know, when we think of the current White House and its impact on the idea of the big, beautiful business bill or whatever we want to call it, it's coming. A couple of policy points about that is weakening the social safety net in terms of what we look at with SNAP programs, worsening the racial gap and the divide. It's almost as if we're headed for another civil war of ideas here in America, where right and left can't find the common ground to be able to work together so that we're all able to live well together. The restricting access to higher education, harming minority-owned businesses, dismantling civil rights protections that we've fought for over the years, rolling back environmental protections, and the list of things goes on and on and on. And so I cannot stress how important it is that electoral politics and engagement in what the Center for Common Ground does it all year around, not just at one time. You know, Dr. King made this kind of commentary. He said, "A threat to justice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere." I like to amend that by simply saying, "A threat to democracy anywhere is a threat to democracy everywhere." And since we're speaking a little bit about the faith traditions in regards to this, you know, it's so important that people of faith engage and are involved and also informed and educating. I wonder what would happen if you had persons of faith across all persuasions who banded together and bonded together around issues whereby which we're able to bring about change in the lives of people so that our quality of life is able to live better. One of the professions I operate in is I'm the doctor of ministry person for the School of Religion at Hampton University. And I'm always talking to pastors about social justice and engagement with your congregations. Another role, I'm working in the School of Liberal Arts as well, and I'm teaching classes in ethics and philosophy, political science, and also public policy. And so that's some of my background as well at the same time. And so when we think about Second Chronicles chapter 7 and verse 14, we all know it. The scripture says to us, "If my people who are called by my name would humble themselves and pray." The scripture says that God says he will hear from heaven and he will hear the land. And again, we know that we do not add to scripture nor take away from scripture in any way. But if I could contextualize it, I would say if all of God's people would begin to humble themselves and not only just pray, but vote, because God is not going to do for us the things that we can do for ourselves. We've heard our brother say tonight about James in the book of James, in terms of our faith without our works is dead. And so our faith is an engaging process where we are constantly inside of the voting booth, speaking with one loud voice, where we can rally around issues together. Let me just kind of leave this tonight, Andrea. Thank you so much for having me, because the times that we are in are critically important. And what we can't do is lose our democracy within this republic for how we are represented all throughout the nation. And the work begins every single day, years or two before each election, and that's on every level. And so to have persons engage and people of faith engage, you know, the work that we do, we liken it to the work of Jesus. And I'm in Matthew chapter 25, where the scripture begins to say to us, as Jesus is giving a parable in Matthew 25 in verse 34, here's what he says. I like to read it to us. The Bible says that the king will say to those on his right hand, "Come, you blessed my Father, inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the foundation of the world. For I was hungry and you gave me food. I was thirsty and you gave me drink. And I was a stranger and you took me in. I was naked and you clothed me. And I was sick and you visited me. I was in prison and you came to me." Then the text says, "And the righteous will answer him, saying, Lord, when did we see you hungry and feed you, or thirsty and give you drink? When did we see you a stranger and take you in, or naked and clothe you? Or when did we see you sick or in prison and come to you?" And the king will answer and say to them, "Assuredly I say to you, inasmuch as you did it to one of the least of these," watch what the scripture says, "my brethren, you did it to me." And so I often encourage policymakers that we must always consider the margins, the least, the last, and the lost, to ensure that they are included, that they have upward mobility and are able to not only survive, but thrive just like the rest of us. And so one of the ways that we can do that is engage in education and our financial support for the Center for Common Ground to ensure that those who are least, last, and lost are indeed loved in a very practical and tangible way. Thank you so much, Andrea, for having me tonight, and great to be among these giants who are engaged in electoral politics.
Bishop Johnson, thank you so very, very much. One of the things that we say is when we talk about the big, beautiful bill, we remind people that the Black and the brown people, that we are the people who will be hurt first and worst by these very, very, very bad policies. I can remember Reverend Barber saying, and a number of other faith leaders echoing, budgets are a moral document. They basically say, this is where we as a country are choosing to invest or disinvest. I lobbied on budgets on Capitol Hill from 2016 to 2019. This is the most immoral budget I have ever laid eyes on. So, in wrapping up, I want to thank all of my guests. It was wonderful hearing you speak and getting inspired all over again. I need to thank the wonderful Center for Common Ground staff who have been letting people in the room, playing the music, making sure that our guest speakers were all co-hosted, our democracy-centered leaders. So many of you are here. You are on the front lines of this fight for democracy. I do need to tell people we did raise It's very close to $75,000 so far. So this is excellent, but our goal is for 175,000. So we are going to have to keep working. We have a $50,000 match, and that match will go until we get another $20,000, and then we make the match. So this is a great kickoff for the work that we need to do both in Virginia now, and we're going to be doing some work in Georgia, and then looking toward 2026. I want everybody to imagine. I want you to close your eyes and I want you to imagine. I'm going to say November 7th. The election is on November 4th, but we might have some close races where they need to spend a little extra time counting the ballots. But I want you to imagine how you will feel on November 7th when at the end of the day, and they announce this is what we did in Virginia. We are looking at a flip of statewide government to have people in the state government who care about the fact that 32,000 Virginians have already lost their jobs and potentially more will lose their jobs, who will want to find a solution to doing a stopgap for all the federal funds that we lost for education, who will want to find a solution to how on earth will low income people and even middle income people afford and get health care. And that there are now at least 60 people in the House of Delegates who will support these goals. The opposite, the other side, all they care about is where trans people go to the bathroom. As far as they're concerned, everything else is okay. So in Virginia, we have a very stark choice because we are right on the other side of the river. Imagine how we will feel and imagine how others on the other side of the river will feel. So we plant the flag in Virginia tonight, and we say, Virginia will pick up the mantle, and Virginia will be all about loving our brothers and sisters and making sure they're okay. Thank you all so very, very much for joining me. I'm not going to be able to sleep. I'm barely going to be able to pay attention to the football game. I mean, I am just going like crazy. Gabe put up my slide. We want you to be involved in writing postcards for us. We are writing postcards to the 885,000 registered Black voters in Virginia. There are voter registrations going on. So when I looked this morning, there are actually 941,000 registered Black voters. We also have phone banks going on. You can go to our website, centerforcommonground.org, and under Take Action, you will see postcards as one of your actions. Another action under Take Action will be phone banking. We do phone bank training literally every Monday, every Tuesday, and every Thursday from 6 to 8 p.m. So come learn how our system works. And then it's open 7 days a week. Make phone calls when you can. And we are also canvassing in Virginia. And one of the other things we want to use our funds for is we want to pay canvassers who live in the areas where we have democracy center. We want people who live in the community to know we respect the people in the community, and we will hire them to go and reach out and talk to their neighbors. We understand how tough times are. We get that they have been hurt first and worst, and we want to come in and begin to provide immediate assistance. So again, I am feeling very, very inspired. I hope all of you are as well. So again, thank you so very, very much for giving your time, your treasure, and being a part of our family. Much love to all of you. Good night.